Good afternoon to you. Mark Suttoth, HurricaneTrack.com, here with your off-season edition of the Hurricane Outlook and Discussion. It is Monday, April 6, 2020. I hope your week is going well so far. With all the stuff going on the globe that is rather unpleasant, let's at least talk about something that we can totally wrap our brains around, something that we are used to, and something that gives us great pleasure, and that is tracking the weather. Now, I'm not saying that hurricanes are pleasurable, but a lot of people find the weather very fascinating. They find it very peaceful. And, we're going to approach it from that perspective. We're not going to use fear and intimidation and anything like that. We're going to use education and put our passion for studying the weather and observing the weather to great use and do some great things. So welcome to the off-season edition here. It continues on. Just a few more weeks of calling it the off-season edition. And then it'll be the beginning of the East Pacific hurricane season. Basically in early May, I'll just transition this over to the Hurricane Outlook and Discussion. During the off season, I go over a lot more detailed stuff that kind of keeps us all occupied, as we're waiting for hurricane season to get here. We take an intimate look at some of the finer details of upcoming forecasts, as well as lower 48 weather and things like that. All right, so there you go. Let's get rid of me and get started on today's tour. And, it's hurricane season somewhere, all 12 months out of the year, and that is certainly the case over here in the Southwest Pacific. At least this is a name that I can pronounce, Cyclone Herald, and this is a doozy. Check this out. Andy Hazelton tweeting this. He is the assistant scientist at the University of Miami, and he works for NOAA's Hurricane Research Division, and he tweeted this earlier today. Terrifying satellite loop, the rapid clearing of the eye and the explosion of cold cloud tops as it moves over the small patch of water between the islands was insane. So look, there's the center of circulation. Clearly there's the eye. And then all of that gray that pops out right there, that's the cooling of the cloud tops. The clouds are pushing higher into the atmosphere. That's convection. And just that small stretch of water between this small group of islands here, and then as it makes landfall over here, just that one little stretch there was enough for this to explosively deepen, as we call it. The low pressure presumably plummeting. There's no aircraft recon, unfortunately, but a very, very bad situation over here in the Southwest Pacific in the Vanuatu area after going through the Solomon Islands. And it'll be interesting to see what kind of damage reports we get. But it's also, as you note, it's going clockwise, the circulation, because this is in the southern hemisphere. And down there, this is just the same as a hurricane. There's no difference. It is a hurricane in the southern hemisphere. And so it's rotating clockwise instead of counterclockwise. But that, my friends, is an incredible example of explosive deepening or strengthening. The eye becomes warm in the center there. It clears out, becomes very symmetric and circular. From a scientific perspective, this is incredible. From a damage perspective and the effect on population, not so incredible for obvious reasons, but I wanted to show you this. I'm sure you've been aware, seeing this all over your social media if you follow the weather. All right. Now on to something that came out on April 2nd, last week. Dr. Phil Klotzbach and his colleagues at Colorado State University. No doubt you've already heard about this, but what I'm going to do is just kind of go into it a little bit, kind of picking out the reasons behind the above normal forecast. Most of those reasons you should have already known about because you've been watching this update from yours truly since January, if not before. And we've been on top of some of these things. Our collective thought process, the YouTube comments and elsewhere on social media. It's not just me, it's you guys too. We've all been tracking these features that have led Dr. Klotzbach and his colleagues to call for an above average season coming up. So just to recap, 16 named storms is the forecast. Out of those 16 named storms, they are forecasting half, 8, to become hurricanes, and half of those to become major hurricanes. So for all of you doing homeschooling, There's your fractions for you. All right. Figure it all out. So 16, half becoming hurricanes, another half becoming major hurricanes. And so, the ACE, the accumulated cyclone energy, which is this number right here. I'm painting over it in red. It should be yellow, but whatever. 150, where the average, up to 2010 anyway, was 106. So definitely an above average hurricane season forecast by Dr. Klotzbach. Why is this the case? Let's just go back to his Twitter page, and you can see some of the reasoning here. Tropical and subtropical Atlantic are generally warmer than normal, and that correlates fairly well with typical March sea surface temperature patterns that are associated with above normal hurricane seasons. And folks, we've been tracking this, since the end of last hurricane season. This is no surprise. And there are other factors as well. The lack of ENSO, or El Nino Southern Oscillation. The El Nino, nope, not happening. Probably going to have at least neutral, if not cool neutral, so just slightly cooler than neutral conditions. But the lack of El Nino, just put a big X in here. No El Nino means more favorable conditions in the Atlantic for hurricanes to form. And again, I'm just going to keep emphasizing this, and I'm going to hammer this a lot. These are just facts that we're talking about. Do not let this worry you. And I know Mark, that's easy for you to say with all that's going on. I live on the coast too. I don't live on the beach, but I live in Wilmington, North Carolina. My house is only a few miles from the Atlantic, and I worry about hurricanes just as much as you do. But I'm also very well educated as to what to do if a hurricane is coming. And I know that's different for everyone. I get that. But we're going to approach this instead of hiding from the facts and pretending like there's not any hurricanes to deal with. We know that there probably will be. So let's use our collective knowledge, our common sense, and do something about it. Let's just try to put that all to good use. Think of it like this. I love sports and hurricane analogies. If you follow me long enough, you know. Weather and basketball, especially. So you are the coach of a well-respected team, and you guys are down 12 points with just a few minutes to go. Instead of the coach coming in and saying, we're going to lose, let's lose gracefully, whatever, and he's got, all hangdog. No. They come in and they go, you know what? Let's figure out the next play. Let's figure out what to do. Let's strategize, and let's pull through this. They rally the team together. The coach does. So I want to be your coach here and rally you guys into understanding what we're up against. That's the number one thing. Understanding the hazards, and then making a plan. That's the third thing. And then we can develop a game plan to deal with hurricanes as they come along. All right? So as I go over this seasonal forecast, yes, it's for above normal activity, but I'm going to remind you, we've been here before. We need to act like it, okay? We know hurricanes. And yes, I do think it'll make a difference, because if we can get through this pandemic, whatever that means, and it's different for all of us, and I know some people are not surviving, but I'm saying, my gosh, this is the worst thing we have faced since World War II, arguably. Maybe even further back in time than that. We know hurricanes, all right? So we got this. We can do it, especially if we use common sense. So anyway, back on track. No El Nino as we show here. That is another big indicator. Now this is interesting also from Andy Hazelton, that the Euro, the ECMWF seasonal guidance is pretty striking, because it's been fairly conservative, at least for the past 3 years. The 17, 18, and 19 hurricane seasons, it came in rather bearish on the seasons, and we had some pretty big seasons, right? Now it's pretty bullish on it, and these are different anomalies and charts that I'm not going to get into what they mean right now, but just look at what he's saying here. You break it down, the bottom line, as it were, that this is a very different look to the Euro seasonal forecast than what we have seen the last several years. It's much more favorable in its presentation out in time. It's still pretty early, and that's why this last sentence is important. Still too early to make big predictions. You just can't go out and say, oh, it's going to be absolutely hyperactive, just like when it has been conservative, although some people definitely rode that wave. Oh, it's not going to be a busy season, and look what we've had. So these are just clues. These are the keys to the game, so to speak. And we're going to win this game if I have anything to do with it. All right? So now looking at the current situation, and here we are. Sea surface temperature anomalies in the Atlantic main development region, knocking on the door of about 0.5 degrees Celsius above normal across this entire region if you averaged it out. That's that's saying something right there. So a lot of energy. Gulf of Mexico running above average. It's always going to be warm enough for hurricanes. The above average part is more for spring storms where you get a storm system coming through. That's my cold front in a low pressure area. And you got high pressure out over the western Atlantic, and it pumps around that and flows all that deep moisture into the storm system, and bam, you get severe weather. Enhanced additional energy from the Gulf does fuel more severe weather, more precipitable water in the atmosphere, and that is a problem. I am not worried about the Gulf being warmer, like 90 degrees everywhere or something in hurricane season. It's going to eventually level out and be warm enough no matter what. Make no mistake about it. But in the Pacific, this is the area we're going to really watch, and we should start to see a pretty dramatic cooling. These little blue areas will show up all across the main development region of the Pacific here, and that'll be the signs. If that really starts to happen, following what the models are indicating, and all of the major modeling is indicating cooler and cooler tropical Pacific anomalies and actual temperatures. These are what we can watch on a weekly basis. And this is another perspective, the Richard Reynolds method. Dr. Richard Reynolds, this is a weekly average. Look at that. When is the last time that we can look at the entire main development region here, and everything is either right at normal, which is generally this area here, or above average or normal everywhere else? So, that's it. We got to face it. Okay, probably going to have a busy hurricane season. Now what? Exactly. Well, we will deal with it as it comes. A little bit more evidence for you. The subsurface is really starting to light up with all these blues here. We'll get these upwelling events where the water comes to the surface, and this will start to shrink more, the warm pool as it's called, and we will transition towards cool neutral, probably, maybe even weak La Nina conditions. But the main takeaway here, I want to emphasize this, is in terms of the Pacific, no El Nino. That is the number one big driver overall once you have a fairly warm Atlantic, at least. I think the biggest thing is, and Dr. Gray picked up on this, Dr. William Gray, remember, he is the guy who started all this a long time ago, more than 3 decades. That was the biggest indicator. El Nino or no El Nino really was the big driver, and there's not going to be an El Nino. Never say never, but you can almost guarantee it at this point. All right, moving along to lower 48 weather. It's severe weather season. Want to keep you aware. A lot going on. A lot of people very anxious, very stressed. People out of work. A lot of people at home waiting for this pandemic to loosen its grip. So that's a lot more people in their homes instead of in their businesses, I guess is one way to look at it, that are in the way of severe weather. So that has advantages and that has disadvantages. The number one tool that you have is information and a heads up from people like me and the Storm Prediction Center and NOAA and the Weather Service, etc. So this is day one. Marginal conditions in the darker green. Not too worried about it. Day 2, tomorrow. A little bit more enhanced or enhancement of the overall pattern with a slight risk in here. What does that mean? If we look at the tornado threat, 2%. So you take 10 balls and, like ping pong balls, 2 of them say yes, 8 of them say no. You jumble them up, you pick one out, you got a 2 in 10 shot. It's not quite that simple, but that's one way to look at it. 2% is not 0. Wind, higher, 15%. All right, so that's a little bit more to be concerned with. And what is wind? What does that mean exactly? The wind threat. Straight line winds, downburst winds, the supercells, or in this case just big thunderstorms, not necessarily supercells, hopefully. They grow in the atmosphere, and the very heavy rain and the hail and everything creates a lot of cold sinking air, and it drops, and it spreads out along the surface. You get these downdrafts. That's one way. They also produce wind just because they're there. But that's what we mean when we talk about wind damage. Winds in excess of 58 miles per hour, something like that, just rounded up to 60. That's a problem. That's a pretty big area of the Mid-Atlantic on across portions of the Appalachians into the Ohio Valley for the wind threat. Hail tomorrow, also about 15%. So watch out for big hail. This is tomorrow. Going on into Wednesday, the threat is over the Tennessee Valley for the highest probability of problems. And go to spc.noaa.gov. It's right there. spc.noaa.gov. You can do it on your mobile device, your tablet, your computer, whatever. And you can look this up yourself under convective outlooks. Get familiar with it. It could be very, very helpful. One thing I'm looking at is, this is from Eric Webb. There might be a more pronounced severe weather event coming up around day 7, right in here. See, that's what D7 means. And this is just a snapshot showing the upper level winds and the jet core, etc. So just look out beyond day 3. Okay, please use that SPC, spc.noaa.gov, weather.gov, weather.gov, and keep an eye on severe weather beyond day 3, because we might, emphasizing might, we don't know yet, we might have a pretty nasty severe weather event unfolding towards the coming weekend and maybe beyond, late into this coming weekend. Please keep your eyes on that. Alrighty. I started last Wednesday the Hurricane U for university. See the logo? Hurricane U. Remember ESPNU? It's an educational series, and it's done live. I took the bold step of doing it live. Actually in my daughter's bedroom. She's right across the hall from me, and she's a college student here at UNC Wilmington, so she lives at home, not paying for tuition and dormitory. But anyhow, I digress. So she's got a big old TV in there, and I set everything up, did FaceTime, and we had Stanley Goldenberg on. And if you haven't seen it, check it out. It's on my YouTube. It's non-monetized. It's available for everybody. And it's called Hurricane U, and it's a nice, lighthearted look at hurricanes. Why we have them, tracking, modeling. The first broadcast or first episode was kind of a general look at things and just a good conversation starter with myself and Mr. Goldenberg. This Wednesday, and let me just check to be sure, because I sent the guy a message. And I saw that I had a little message there on Twitter. Hang on, bear with me. Yep, he says yes. Good. So, had to confirm it. So my guest this Wednesday is Ryan Rickert, and I think that he might be a major Ryan Rickert. Let's see. I know he's with the 53rd Weather Reconnaissance, but I think he's Major Rickert. I'll have to check on that. I don't know. I'll ask him. But it's Ryan Rickert. We do know that, and I do know that he's with the 53rd Weather Reconnaissance Squadron out of Keesler. So my guest this Wednesday is going to be Ryan Rickert, and this guy is brilliant. I've known him for a couple of years now, thanks to the National Tropical Weather Conference, and we're going to talk all about hurricane tracking. From what an invest is, how they do the low-level invest, some stories that they've, dealt with in hurricane penetrations of eye walls, etc. And we're going to get down to the nitty-gritty of hurricane tracking. It's going to be absolutely fascinating. So I hope you tune in. That's at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. We go live. It's just a soft opening, 4 or 5 minutes. I wait for people to jump on the stream, and then we get started. I do it over FaceTime. And as you see, let me just jump ahead on the video. Yeah, see Stan Goldenberg behind me there? That's how I do it. So that's where Ryan Rickert will be, and that's coming up this Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on YouTube, free for everybody, supported by these folks here on Patreon. Our patrons help to support this. Thank you very much. I am on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. You can support what I'm doing, and you can go all the way up to $25 a month. And if you do that, you get one of, come on, trying to do this, these. I'm so excited. Look at that. That sucker's huge. That is the brand new 2020. It's upside down. Beautiful. Well done, Mark. All that planning and I've screwed it up. That's fine. It's better than kids running through here. You've seen those bloopers from people working at home? And I have 5 of them at home. Anyway, I got my map upside down. I'll take it. Anyhow, this is 24 by 18, and I designed this. It's the official 2020 hurricane tracking chart. Full color, as you saw, 24 by 18, and it is available to all of our patrons at the $25 level. I'll be shipping them out starting this week. Or you may purchase one outright for $20 flat, including shipping. I will put the link to it in the description on this YouTube update, this discussion, and you can just buy one. I only printed 100 of them. That's it. And if I run out, I'll print some more. And the company I used, by the way, they're called Uprinting, and they did a really, really good job. I've done stuff with them before. They are not a paid sponsor or anything like that. I pay them, and they produced this very high-quality hurricane tracking chart. This is how I got started in my career 25 years ago, producing hurricane tracking charts. I actually drew that myself in Adobe Illustrator many, many years ago on a Mac, and it's literally my hurricane tracking chart that I designed myself. So it's a custom-made, I make my own music, I make my own maps, and you can own one and track the old school way. We're all kind of doing things different this year. Well, I was planning this before the stinking virus came along. Old school tracking, very few people do that anymore. If you pick one up, it's usually in a little booklet or something from a TV station, and it's okay. But this sucker, look at the sense of scale. Look how big that is. That's huge. You got to get one. It's gonna $20, and it helps to support me a little bit. But more importantly, it gives you something to do on your end, and order it, and when they're gone, they're gone. Maybe I'll order some more if I need to. But on Patreon, at the $25 level, it's included, and I'll send it to you at no additional charge, just to entice you there, because we're going to be doing some incredible stuff on Patreon. We've already done it, and we're going to continue to do that, and it's the engine that supports this whole operation. And it helps to support the greater good of contributing to the science and the education of everybody. Right? So there you go. Wanted to make that pitch for you. Also on Patreon, you get access to my podcast, Stories from the Hurricane Highway, the audio podcast, going over my entire career, one event, 1 mile at a time, to use the metaphor of the Hurricane Highway. And it's almost ready, just a few more episodes to go. An original television series. I'm no longer doing Tracking the Hurricanes documentaries per se, those 2-hour movies. It's now a series, and I reformatted it and everything. It's really good. I'll tell you, I've watched the 3 that I've gotten finished. Those are already on Patreon, those 3, and that's available, the podcast and the series right here. You don't have to join these other levels to get that. That's just at the $1 level. Seriously. These other levels just give you more access to more stuff that is beyond anything you can imagine if you're into weather and especially tracking hurricanes. But back to this, the Hurricane Highway. It's going to be 7 or 8 episodes. I will finish it all up. I'm working on episodes 4 and 5 now, and this will all be finished by May. And it'll be on Patreon, included with Patreon, commercial free. And then in mid-June, I'll put the whole series on Amazon Prime Video for $15 for the whole season. So very few studios are putting out original content right now because everything is shut down. And I will be launching an original series. That's pretty awesome if you think about it. And one of the positives, silver linings. It's all about looking at the positives. I will be putting out some original content. Maybe Netflix will call me. Hey, can we buy that? I'm dreaming there, but it is pretty good. I think you're going to really like it. It's a look back, the Hurricane Highway TV series. It's a look back at the 2019 hurricane season, just like I used to do with those documentary movies, but it's different. You'll just have to watch it to find out. So if you join Patreon, it's right there. The first 3 episodes get me recentered so I can do my exit, and I'll be dropping the other episodes as we go along. Episodes 4 and 5 will be ready by the end of this month, just so you know. All right, we covered a lot, and again, I'm going to reemphasize one more time before I go. We were all in this together. I got 25 years of experience doing this stuff. I know hurricanes extremely well. I don't know everything. I think I know how to talk to you and how to talk with you and how to appreciate what you're going through on your end of the screen there. And we're going to get through whatever happens. And if it's a bad hurricane season and there's 10 of them that hit the United States, you know what? I am a believer that we will get through it. It doesn't mean it's going to be pleasant, but we'll get through it. We will handle it. We're not going to talk fear. We're not going to talk doom and gloom. That's not happening. We're going to talk facts. We're going to talk science. And we're going to talk about what you can do to prepare and to use right there. Good old common sense. Let's see if... for next week, I'm going to find it. It just came to me. My dad has a picture that he gave me a long time ago. And it's him in the military, and he's holding up a sign, and it says, think. You know what? Give me a second. Let's see if I can find it. Where is it? In my jumbled office. It's lost in here somewhere. It's messy in here. I'm going to show it to you because it has been my motto. And I haven't been perfect. I've made mistakes, but honestly, it's true. You have to use common sense. You have to think about things and not let your fear of the unknown overcome you. And I'm going to help you do that. All right? That's my goal and my promise to you. All right? So there you go. I'm going to be upbeat about it, so help me God. That's the way I look at it. You guys have a great rest of your week. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for supporting me via Patreon or anything else, and just by watching the videos. That is support in and of itself, and I cannot thank you enough. I am Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. We'll talk again Wednesday when we do Hurricane U live with Ryan Rickert from the Hurricane Hunters out of Keesler. I'll see you then.